Lord Cassian Vale fired me in front of 32 people, 3 crystal mirrors, and 1 very bored office imp that had been chewing on the corner of a payroll request since breakfast. He did it with a smile. That was the part people remembered later. Not the words exactly. Not the little silver dismissal scroll he tapped against the conference table like he was conducting an orchestra. Not even the way the junior clerks stared down at their ink trays, because looking at me would have made it real. They remembered the smile. Polite, educated, noble-born, completely empty behind the eyes. "My name is Mara Veyne," I said before he could continue. "I'm 38 years old. I am the senior monoledger accountant for the Hollowmere Dungeon Payout Office. I have held my certification seal for 14 years. He blinked like I had interrupted a toast. Around us, the payout hall hummed with Thursday morning work. Crystal lamps buzzed above the long desks. Copy sprites clicked their tiny teeth over duplicate contracts. Someone's tea kettle shrieked in the break alcove, and nobody moved to quiet it because nobody wanted to be the first person to act normal. Cassian leaned back in the director's chair. He had owned for exactly 11 days. "Former senior accountant," he corrected. That was when my replacement smiled. Her name was Mara Veyne, his cousin. 24 years old, freshly graduated from the Royal Academy of Administrative Thaumaturgy, with a lacquered wand, pearl buttons, and the kind of confidence you only get when nobody has ever let you fail in a room that mattered. She gave me a little sympathetic tilt of the head. "You know the one. The kind people use when they have already packed your career into a box in their mind." Cassian slid the dismissal scroll across the table. It stopped beside my cold mint tea. "Your position has been made redundant due to modernization," he said. "We're streamlining the dungeon payout structure." I looked at the scroll, then at him. "During contract renewal week." His smile tightened. "We have reviewed the situation." "No," I said softly. "You have reviewed a summary." A few people inhaled through their noses. Cassian's family ring flashed as he folded his hands. A little sunburst crest. House Vale. Old money, older arrogance. "Mara," he said, using my first name in that smooth way managers use when they are about to insult you and want it to sound kind. "This office cannot continue being dependent on one clerk and her outdated seal." I nodded. Not because I agreed. Because there are moments in life when the universe places a beautifully sharpened blade on the table, and all you have to do is not put your hand in front of it. "I understand," I said. He looked relieved. That was the first sign he had no idea what he had done. Because in Hollowmere, every dungeon payout contract worth more than 50,000 spirit stones had to be certified through a living monoseal. A monoseal is not just a signature. It is a signature, a password, a lie detector, and a magical liability trap wearing the same expensive robe. And for 14 years, every active payout agreement between Hollowmere Office, the Adventurer Guilds, the Dungeon Delvers, the Royal Tax Bureau, and the Spirit Banks had been bound to my seal. Not the company's seal. Mine. Cassian thought he was removing a tired accountant. What he had actually done was fire the lock from the vault and then act surprised that the door no longer believed in hinges. I did not start out important. That is something people never understand when they hear the ending. They think I must have been secretly powerful from the beginning, some hidden heiress, some master cultivator pretending to shuffle invoices for fun, some mysterious rune savant with a dramatic backstory and a forbidden bloodline. No. I was a widow's daughter from South Quill Row, and I got my first job at Hollowmere because I could add columns without using a counting charm. That was it. My mother cleaned warding soot out of temple chimneys. My father had been a cartographer for low-tier dungeons until a mimic chest bit off 3 fingers and most of his patience. We were not poor in the tragic ballad sense. We were poor in the ordinary sense. Rent due. Boots repaired twice. Soup stretched with barley. That kind of poor. When I was 24, I took the junior ledger position at Hollowmere because it paid 18 silver crowns a week and included lunch tokens. The lunch tokens were terrible. Every meal tasted faintly of turnip and committee decisions. But I had 2 younger brothers in apprenticeship, a mother with a cough that became worse every winter, and an ancestral house with a roof that leaked whenever the moon was full. So I stayed. At first, my job was simple. Record dungeon clearances. Confirm party shares. Check Monster Core appraisals. Apply tax rates. Send payout instructions to the spirit bank. It sounds boring because it was boring. People think dungeon work is all heroes and cursed swords and glowing treasure. But after the heroes drag a basilisk horn back to town, someone has to calculate whether the healer gets a hazard bonus, whether the rogue's lockpick expenses are deductible, whether the swordsman's emotional support griffin counts as a team asset, and whether the necromancer is legally allowed to claim skeleton maintenance under professional tools. That someone was usually me. And because I was quiet, people assumed I was harmless. I did not have a noble accent. I did not float my quill with magecraft. I did not wear spirit jade earrings or quote old philosophers in meetings. I came in early, tied my hair back, sharpened 3 pencils, and made the numbers line up. That made me invisible. Being invisible is painful. But it is also useful. I learned who lied on expense reports. I learned which guild captains paid their healers late. I learned which dungeon contractors filed the same emergency torch replacement claim every month. I learned that the Royal Tax Bureau always sent audit notices at the worst possible time, that dragon-bonded adventurers never read small print, and that rich men called paperwork simple right before they signed something that could bankrupt them. By my 5th year, I was correcting senior clerks. By my 7th, I was training auditors who outranked me. By my 9th, the old director, Master Renwick, stopped approving any dungeon contract until I had checked the continuity clauses. Renwick was not warm. He once congratulated me on my birthday by saying, "Your error rate remains acceptable." That was practically a hug from him. But he understood systems. He knew the payout office was not just a place where adventurers collected money. It was the hinge between danger and commerce. If we failed, delvers stopped going into dungeons. If delvers stopped, monster pressure built up. If monster pressure built up, villages got overrun, roads closed, mana crystals became scarce, potion prices rose, and suddenly everyone in the kingdom cared very deeply about ledger accuracy. So Renwick made me certify. It cost 6,000 spirit stones and 11 months of night study. I paid for half with savings and half with a loan from the Quiet Lantern Credit Cooperative at an interest rate that still makes my left eye twitch. The certification exam took 2 days. Day 1 was contract law, tax magic, payout ethics, and rune ledger integrity. Day 2 was practical sealing. They handed me 20 corrupted contracts, 3 false signatures, a cursed invoice, and 1 live oath clause that tried to bite through the desk. I passed with a score of 94%. The examiner told me I had a depressing talent for preventing expensive mistakes. Again, practically a hug. After that, my seal became part of the office structure. Not because I demanded it. Because clients demanded it. The North Gate Adventurer Guild trusted me because I had once caught a duplicated death benefit before it went to the wrong widow. The Stone Finch Delvers trusted me because I fought for their hazard pay after the Crimson Well incident. The Royal Tax Bureau trusted me because my declarations arrived clean, boring, and early. The Spirit Bank trusted me because I never sent a payout batch without verifying the soulprint hash. And the dungeon contractors trusted me because I did not let directors play games with their money. That last part mattered. A lot. Dungeon payout contracts are not like ordinary invoices. They involve loot shares, royal taxes, injury reserves, guild fees, resurrection insurance, curse remediation, equipment liens, and contribution bonuses. One wrong seal can delay a team's pay for weeks. One missing clause can trigger a penalty larger than a small village's annual budget. One careless director can create a disaster that spreads faster than office gossip. And Hollowmere had survived 14 years without a major payout freeze because I was there. I missed dinners. I missed festivals. I missed my youngest brother's bonding ceremony because the Azure Ant Queen raid produced 386 individual claimant lines and 2 captains were fighting over egg salvage rights. I once slept under my desk during audit week with a folded cloak as a pillow, while a copy sprite nested in my hair. I worked through grief after my father died because payroll did not pause for funerals. I took on extra certification duties because the office said there was no budget for a second seal holder. Every year, they promised they would train someone else. Every year, they decided my overtime was cheaper. That is how people trap you, by the way. Not with chains. With gratitude, urgency, and the sentence, just this once. Just this once, Mara, can you stay late? Just this once, can you certify the emergency contract? Just this once, can you fix Alohan's mistake without reporting it? Just this once, can you cover the director's missing approval? And because I cared about the clerks, the adventurers, the widows, the healers, the people who would actually suffer, I did it. Then Renwick retired. He left with a pension, a silver cane, and one warning to the board. Do not disturb Mara's seal during renewal season. They wrote it down. They filed it. Then they hired Lord Cassian Vale and forgot what reading was for. Cassian arrived with imported coffee, polished boots, and 6 binders titled Efficiency through Arcane Modernization. The binders were beautiful. Useless but beautiful. He held his first all-staff meeting in the rune-lit presentation hall, where the projection crystal had a crack through the middle and made everyone's face look slightly haunted. He talked for 40 minutes. I know because I had 3 payout batches, pending, and watched every minute die in real time. He said Hollowmere was bloated. He said our procedures were legacy-minded. He said the office had become too dependent on personality-based workflows. That meant me. He never said my name, but the whole room turned slightly in my direction anyway. Elira stood beside him, nodding with a silver stylus pressed to her lips like she was absorbing wisdom instead of breathing perfume and nonsense. After the meeting, I approached him with the renewal calendar. Director Vale, I said, before any staffing changes are made, you need to review the dungeon continuity agreements, especially sections 12 through 16. He smiled like I was a child offering him a drawing. I appreciate your concern. That phrase should be carved above the gates of every preventable disaster. It is not concern, I said. It is procedure. His eyes cooled. Mara, one of my goals here is to reduce unnecessary fear around process. People cling to old systems because those systems make them feel important. I looked at him for a moment. Behind him, a clerk named Tavin dropped a stack of forms and whispered a prayer to the paper gods. The seal continuity clause is not emotional, I said. It activates automatically if the certified holder is removed without transfer. Cassian gave a soft laugh. Removed? Yes. You make it sound violent. It is a legal term. I assure you, the office owns its contracts. The office owns the contracts, I said. It does not own my certification. That was the moment he decided I was difficult. Not wrong. Difficult. There is a difference in management. Wrong people can be corrected. Difficult people must be made an example of. For the next 2 weeks, small things changed. My access to director-level files was reduced. Meeting invitations disappeared from my crystal inbox. Elira began asking my junior clerks for process explanations instead of asking me. One afternoon, I found her standing at my desk, trying to open the blue ledger. The blue ledger was a bound spirit accounting record for high-risk dungeon payouts. It was older than half the office furniture and twice as temperamental. The cover was dark leather stamped with a silver ward. If you touched it without authorization, it hummed in a way that made your teeth regret being teeth. Elira had both hands on it. The ledger was growling. I set down my tea. You should not force that. She pulled back quickly. I wasn't forcing it. The ledger snapped at her sleeve. I raised an eyebrow. She tucked her sleeve behind her wrist. I was only checking compatibility for migration. To what? Our new cloud mirror system. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Not long. Just enough to stop my soul from leaving my body. You want to migrate oath-bound dungeon payouts to a shared mirror archive. She smiled brightly. Exactly, more collaborative. Collaborative with whom? Authorized leadership. The Blue Ledger contains death benefits, curse liabilities, resurrection escrow, and sealed loot disputes. Yes, and leadership needs visibility. Elira, I said carefully, visibility is how people end up cursed by documents they were never meant to see. She gave me that little head tilt again. You seem very attached to the old way. No, I said. I'm attached to not testifying before a royal inquiry. She flushed. That afternoon, she filed a complaint saying I was resistant to innovation. The next morning, Cassian called me into his office. His office still smelled like new rugs and ambition. He had replaced Renwick's battered filing cabinets with glass shelves full of decorative spellbooks arranged by color. None of them had cracked spines. That told me everything. He gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. He sighed. Mara, your attitude is becoming a barrier. My attitude has no clause in the renewal contracts. There it is again, he said. Contracts, clauses, barriers. I need leaders who see opportunity. You need someone who knows why the barriers were built. He leaned forward. Let me be direct. Elira will be assuming oversight of payout modernization. You will assist her in documenting your current workflow. My workflow is not the issue. My certification is. Elira has academy credentials. She does not have dungeon payout seal authority. She can apply. Applications take 6 months. We have influence. Influence does not speed up the Spirit Bank Ethics Tribunal. His jaw tightened. I should have stopped there. I know that now. But after 14 years of being quiet, sometimes the truth escapes wearing work shoes. I added, Director, you may want to read the old guild charter before you revoke anything tied to my seal. His face went still. Are you threatening me? No. Because it sounds like you believe the office cannot function without you. I looked at the decorative spellbooks, then at his untouched inbox, then at the renewal calendar on his wall, where 3 major dungeon contracts were marked in gold for the following week. No, I said. I believe the office can function without me if it follows the transfer procedure. And if I decide your procedure is unnecessary, then the wards will decide for you. He dismissed me 5 seconds later. 3 days after that, he scheduled the public restructuring meeting. He wanted witnesses. So did the contract. The dismissal scroll was badly written. That bothered me more than it should have. Not the firing itself. I had felt that coming like rain in my knees. But the scroll had formatting errors. My title was wrong. My certification level was outdated. They listed my department as General Accounts, which had not existed since the Goblin payroll merger 9 years earlier. Worst of all, the stated reason was redundancy due to technological improvement. That phrase was going to cost them a fortune. I read it twice while Cassian watched me. Elira stood near the projection crystal with a folder hugged to her chest. She looked nervous now, not guilty, nervous. There is a difference. The rest of the office had gone silent, except for the imp, who had finally swallowed the payroll corner and was coughing up sparks. Cassian tapped the table. You may collect your personal items under supervision. Your access badge will deactivate immediately. My seal transfer. He gave a small laugh. Not necessary. Several clerks looked up. I heard Tavin whisper, "Oh no." Cassian ignored him. Elira will handle interim authorization. I turned to her. Have you completed a Class 4 dungeon payout certification? She stiffened. My academy training covered advanced mana administration. That is not what I asked. Cassian cut in. Enough. You are not here to interrogate your successor. My successor cannot legally certify the contracts renewing tomorrow at sunset. His smile vanished. You are a clerk, Mara. There it was. Not senior accountant. Not seal holder. Not the person who had kept his shiny new office from drowning in consequences. A clerk. Just a clerk. Something in me went very still. For years, I had swallowed little insults because there was always work to do. I had let directors take credit. I had let nobles mispronounce my name. I had let adventurer captains shout because they were scared and bleeding and broke. I had let junior mages laugh at my ink-stained cuffs because I knew their mothers still packed their lunches. But that morning, in that room, with my cold tea beside a dismissal scroll and my father's old brass pencil in my pocket, I finally felt the last thread snap. Quietly, cleanly, I signed the acknowledgement. Not the agreement, that matters. The acknowledgement. It said I had received the dismissal. It did not say I accepted their reasoning, waived my rights, transferred my seal, or agreed to provide assistance. Cassian did not notice. Of course he did not. People like him think reading is for people beneath them. I placed my crystal access badge on the table. Then my drawer key. Then the little silver seal ring I wore during office hours. Not my certification seal. That lived under my skin, bound to my mana signature. The ring was just the office interface. The ring landed with a soft click. Everyone heard it. I picked up my satchel. Inside were 3 things: my lunch tin, my personal notebook, and a folded copy of the 712th Royal Dungeon Revenue Accord. I had printed it 2 days earlier. Just in case. Cassian glanced at the notebook. That stays. No, I said, it does not. It contains office processes. It contains my grocery lists, medication reminders for my mother, and 16 years of private curse words about this building. A tiny sound escaped someone near the back. Might have been a laugh, might have been a choking cough. Cassian's cheeks colored. Fine, security will escort you out. The security golem in the corner activated with a gentle chime. It was an old clay model named Bram. I knew because I processed his maintenance invoices every quarter. Bram turned toward me, eyes glowing blue. Employee Mara Veyne, it rumbled. Please proceed toward the exit. Hello, Bram. Hello, Mara Veyne. Your cardigan is pleasant today. Thank you. Cassian looked annoyed that even the golem had manners. I walked to my desk. My clerks did not speak. They were scared. I did not blame them. I took my chipped blue mug, the framed sketch my niece made of me fighting a dragon with an abacus, and the small wooden box where I kept tea leaves. I left the training manuals. I left the binders. I left the department stamp. I also left, very deliberately, the renewal schedule open on my desk. Gold ink. 3 contracts. 46 million spirit stones in annual dungeon payouts. Renewal deadline, sunset the next day. I paused at the door. Not dramatically, I'm not a stage mage. I just remembered my scarf. As I wrapped it around my neck, Cassian said, I hope, after some reflection, you will understand this was necessary. I looked at him. Director Vale, did you notify the Spirit Bank that I was being removed as living certifier? He frowned. That is an internal matter. No, I said, it is not. Elira went pale. Finally. I looked at her because she, at least, might understand enough to be frightened. The ledger checks continuity at midnight. The guild contracts check at dawn. The bank escrow checks at noon. The royal renewal window closes at sunset. If you have not completed a certified transfer by then, every high-tier dungeon payout will freeze. Cassian stood. Are you refusing to cooperate? I am leaving after being terminated without cause from a role. Your office chose not to cross-strain. You signed the acknowledgement. Yes. You will be contacted if needed. I am sure I will. Then I walked out with Bram clomping politely beside me, my tea box under one arm, and 32 people pretending not to watch the most expensive mistake Cassian Vale had ever made. Outside, the rain had started. Not dramatic storm rain. Office rain. Gray, cold, irritating, and exactly the kind that gets under your collar while you wait for a carriage you cannot really afford. I stood under the awning, looked back at the Hollowmere Tower, and felt something I had not felt in years. Not joy. Not revenge. Space. A strange, quiet space inside my chest where panic used to live. Then my crystal mirror buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. I smiled, declined the call, and went home. The first freeze happened at midnight. I know because I was awake. Not because I was waiting, obviously. I was making barley soup for my mother and pretending not to look at the little travel mirror on the kitchen shelf. My mother, who had survived 3 decades of temple soot and raised 3 stubborn children on half a budget and pure willpower, watched me over her spoon. You're listening for something. No. Mara. I am listening professionally. She snorted. At 12:03, the mirror flashed blue. A message from Tavin. Just 2 words. Ledger locked. I did not reply. At 12:09, another message arrived. Elira tried override. At 12:11, Ledger bit her stylus. I put the mirror face down. My mother smiled into her soup. Good Ledger. By dawn, the Northgate Adventurer Guild had received automatic notice that Hollowmere's living certifier had been removed without approved transfer. Their contract suspended new payout clearances for any dungeon ranked silver or above. That affected 28 active parties. By 7:20, the Spirit Bank froze 3 escrow accounts pending identity verification. Not all accounts, just the important ones. Resurrection deposits, injury reserves, and high-value loot distribution. By 8:05, the Royal Tax Bureau requested emergency seal confirmation. By 8:12, Cassian called me. I was feeding my mother's little fire salamander, Pickle, who had decided my dismissal was an excellent excuse to demand extra coal chips. I let the mirror ring. By 8:17, Elira called. By 8:21, Human Resources called. By 8:24, someone from Legal called, which was impressive because Hollowmere Legal usually moved at the speed of damp bread. By 8:30, I had 14 missed calls. At 9:00, I made tea. At 9:15, I sent one message to Tavin. Are the junior clerks being blamed? He replied almost instantly. Not yet, panic too wide. That was good. Panic, when wide enough, has trouble choosing a victim. The collapse was not loud at first. That is another thing people get wrong. Buildings do not usually fall in one dramatic crash. They creak, a beam shifts, dust falls, doors stop closing properly. Someone says that's probably fine. Then the ceiling develops opinions. At Hollowmere, the first creak was the blue ledger refusing to open. The second was the Northgate Guild sending a courier raven with a red ribbon. Red ribbon meant contractual suspension, not anger, worse, procedure. The third was the Spirit Bank requesting Cassian's certifier number. He did not have one. Elira had a trainee number. Trainee numbers are excellent for classroom simulations and completely useless when 46 million spirit stones are sitting behind oath-bound escrow. By noon, the office mirrors were apparently flashing so often that the reception crystal overheated and began projecting incoming calls onto the ceiling. I learned that from Tavin too. He sent updates because he was 26, anxious, and had the survival instincts of a rabbit in a hawk sanctuary. Also because I had once covered his rent advance after his sister got curse fever, and loyalty, unlike leadership speeches, has a memory. At 12:40, the Stonefinch Delvers arrived in person. 6 of them, still muddy, one missing an eyebrow. They had cleared the lower chambers of Marrowdeep and expected their hazard payout before medical liens came due. Instead, the clerk at reception had to explain that funds were temporarily delayed due to administrative transition. Adventurers love many things. Weapons, glory, songs about themselves. They do not love the phrase administrative transition. By 1:15, the Stonefinch captain was shouting loud enough to wake the old gargoyle on the roof. By 1:30, the Royal Tax Bureau sent 2 auditors. Not junior auditors. Silver mask auditors. That meant the kind who smiled politely while calculating penalties large enough to change family histories. By 2:00, Cassian finally sent a written message. Mara, there appears to be a technical issue related to your former seal. Please provide the necessary transfer codes immediately. I read it while buying onions. I did not reply. At 2:08, another message. This is not the time for personal feelings. I bought carrots too. At 2:22, a third. Failure to assist may affect your severance. That one made me laugh in the market. The onion seller asked if I was all right. I said, apparently not, but I'm improving. By 3:00, Hollowmere's board had been notified. By 3:30, the Eastmere Dungeon Cooperative suspended tomorrow's convoy. That mattered because Eastmere supplied 40% of the mana crystals used by 3 healing guilds, 2 potion houses, and the city tram wards. By 4:00, the Royal Tax Bureau calculated potential noncompliance penalties at 800,000 spirit stones if renewal failed. By 4:15, Cassian stopped messaging. At 4:16, board chairwoman Elira Thorne called. I answered. Not because I was ready to help. Because Chairwoman Thorne had once approved my certification reimbursement after finance rejected it 3 times, and I believe in rewarding people who occasionally use their authority correctly. Her face appeared in the mirror, sharp-eyed and older than the portrait in the lobby admitted. Mara, Chairwoman, I understand there has been a staffing issue. That is one way to describe firing the living certifier during renewal week. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Behind her, I could hear shouting. I was told your role had been safely transitioned. It was not transitioned. Can it be transitioned now? Yes. She exhaled. Good. With 6 months of certification processing, a board-approved continuity petition, 2 bank witnesses, 1 guild observer, and my voluntary participation. Silence. Then, very quietly, she said, We do not have 6 months. No. We have until sunset. Yes. Mara, what exactly happens at sunset? The 3 high-tier payout contracts fail renewal. The guilds suspend service. The bank holds escrow. The royal office opens a penalty review. The dungeon contractors invoke breach provisions. Also, depending on how Elira attempted override, the Blue Ledger may file an integrity complaint. Another silence. This one had weight. An integrity complaint against whom? The current director. In the background, someone said something sharp. Chairwoman Thorne covered the mirror with her hand, muffling voices. When she came back, her expression had changed. Mara, would you be willing to come in as an emergency consultant? There it was. Not an apology. Not yet. but the shape of reality had begun to return. What rate is Hollowmere offering? She hesitated. What was your salary? 42,000 spirit stones a year. Her mouth tightened. She knew, of course she knew. The office had paid me 42,000 a year to personally protect contracts worth more than some noble estates. We can offer double. No. Triple. No. What are you asking? I set my market basket on the table. My emergency consulting rate is 6,000 spirit stones per hour, minimum 20 hours, paid in advance through Quiet Lantern Credit Cooperative. Hollowmere will also pay the remaining balance on my certification loan, issue a public correction stating I was terminated without cause, and provide written protection for every junior clerk in my department from retaliation. Chairwoman Thorne stared at me. That is a large request. No, I said. A large request is asking a fired woman to save 46 million spirit stones before dinner. Her lips pressed together. For half a second, I thought she might smile. Then Cassian's voice came from somewhere off-screen. This is extortion. I leaned closer to the mirror. Lord Vale, extortion is illegal pressure for unlawful gain. This is a consulting quote. Legal can explain the difference if they have stopped screaming. Chairwoman Thorne turned away from the mirror. Cassian, leave the room. A muffled protest. Then a door slammed. She looked back at me. Give me 10 minutes. No. Her eyebrows rose. You have 7. Sunset does not negotiate with board chairs. She ended the call. My mother, who had been sitting at the kitchen table, pretending not to listen, stirred her tea. 6,000 an hour. Yes. Should have asked for 7. I was being polite. Your father would be proud. That nearly broke me. Not the firing, not the insults, not the panic. That. I turned away and washed one perfectly clean spoon until I could breathe normally again. At 4:29, Quiet Lantern Credit Cooperative confirmed deposit of 120,000 spirit stones. At 4:31, Hollowmere sent the public correction draft. It was terrible. I edited it. At 4:40, the junior clerk protection agreement arrived. I added names. All of them. At 4:52, a carriage pulled up outside my house with Hollowmere's crest on the door, and a driver who looked like he had been threatened by 3 departments at once. I put on my coat. My mother caught my wrist. Do not let them make you small again. I looked at her hand, thin and strong, still marked with old soot scars. I won't. Then I picked up my satchel, my father's brass pencil, and the printed clause that Cassian should have read before he smiled. When I returned to Hollowmere, the lobby looked like someone had kicked an anthill and given every ant a crystal mirror. Clerks ran between desks. Courier ravens crowded the message rail, pecking at each other's ribbons. The reception imp had climbed the chandelier and was refusing to come down until someone restored reasonable workplace energy. Same honestly. Bram the security golem stood by the entrance. Welcome back, Mara Veyne, he rumbled. Thank you, Bram. Director Vale appears distressed. That is unfortunate. Should I offer him calming pamphlets? Maybe later. The payout hall went quiet when I entered. Not completely. Panic has momentum, but enough. Tavin looked like he had aged 5 years and lost a fight with an ink bottle. Elira sat at my old desk, pale, holding her bandaged finger. The blue ledger was closed in front of her, looking smug in the way only enchanted office supplies can. Cassian stood near the conference room with Chairwoman Thorne and 2 silver mask auditors. His hair was less perfect now. A small comfort, but I took it. He opened his mouth. Chairwoman Thorne said, "Do not." He closed it. I walked to my desk. My nameplate was gone. In its place, someone had put a temporary placard reading payout modernization lead. I picked it up with 2 fingers and set it aside. Elira, I said. She stood too quickly. I didn't know. That was not an apology, but it was the first honest thing I had heard from her. I know, I said. Her eyes filled with embarrassed tears. Cassian said the seal was symbolic. Most dangerous things are symbolic until they activate. She swallowed. I tried to open the ledger. I noticed. It rejected me. You are lucky it only bit your stylus. Her bandaged finger twitched behind the folder. I'm sorry. That one sounded real. So I nodded. Not warm. Not cruel. Just enough. Then I turned to the auditors. Who is laid? The taller silver mask stepped forward. Auditor Pelsaro, we require seal verification, continuity explanation, and confirmation that no unauthorized payout alteration occurred during the gap. Fine. I will need the blue ledger, the renewal packets, the bank mirror, the guild suspension notices, and a pot of blackroot tea. Cassian snapped, tea. I looked at him. Yes, tea. The contracts are already upset. No need for both of us to be. Auditor Saro made a sound, suspiciously close to a laugh. We began. First, I opened the blue ledger. It hummed under my palm, then relaxed. People noticed. They always notice when a locked thing recognizes someone. I checked the integrity line. Illyra had triggered a defensive response, but not a full complaint. Good. That saved them at least 200,000 spirit stones and saved her career from becoming a cautionary footnote. Second, I verified the bank escrow. 3 accounts frozen, no funds lost, no unauthorized movement. Good. Third, I reviewed the guild's suspension notices. Northgate, Stonefinch, and Eastmere had all suspended service, but not yet terminated. Better than expected. Fourth, I checked the renewal packets. That was where I found Cassian's second mistake. Not the firing. That was the big one. The second was pettier, and somehow more irritating. He had tried to reduce the injury reserve percentage from 12% to 7% in the new contracts. For efficiency. I stared at the line. Then I looked at him. Did you approve this? His chin lifted. Our competitors operate with leaner reserves. Our competitors also lost 14 delvers last winter and spent 3 months being picketed by healers. The reserve ties up capital. The reserve pays for people who come back from dungeons missing parts they entered with. That is emotionally phrased. That is mathematically phrased. Bodies are expensive. The room went still. I turned to Chairwoman Thorne. If this version is submitted, the Northgate Guild will reject renewal even with my seal. Cassian scoffed. They accepted 7% in preliminary discussion. With whom? Illyra spoke with their assistant liaison. I rubbed my forehead. Northgate's assistant liaison is a talking raven named Plum, who repeats whatever sounds least confrontational. Illyra whispered, "Oh no." Yes, I said, "Oh no." Cassian's face darkened. This is exactly the kind of obstruction. Auditor Saro interrupted. Director Vale, are you stating for the record that you knowingly reduced mandatory injury reserves during high-tier dungeon renewal without certified review? Cassian went quiet. Beautifully quiet. Chairwoman Thorne looked at him like she was mentally removing his portrait from the wall. I restored the 12% reserve. Then I added a delayed review clause, allowing adjustment only after 6 months of audited injury data and guild consent. That is how adults save money. Not by stealing bandages before the bleeding starts. At 5:40, we had 1 hour and 20 minutes. The bank mirror finally connected. Spirit Bank manager Olin appeared, his face magnified by the crystal, and his mood clearly somewhere below swamp level. Mara, he said. Olin. I heard you were fired. I was. And yet here you are. Consulting. His eyes flicked to someone off-screen at Hollowmere, probably Cassian. Expensively, I hope. Very. Good, proceed. I placed my hand over the seal plate. The plate warmed. A ring of pale blue light rose around my wrist. Living certifier Mara Veyne, confirming temporary emergency continuity for Hollowmere high-tier dungeon payout contracts. Limited to renewal processing only. No authority transfer implied. Olin smiled, precise as ever. Trauma makes good wording. The bank freeze lifted at 5:52. At 6:10, Northgate Guild joined by Mirror. Their guildmaster, Sierra Flint, had one eye, 2 scars, and no patience for noble nonsense. Mara, she said. Sierra, they really fired you. In public. Idiots. Cassian made a strangled noise. Sierra continued. Is the injury reserve restored? Yes. Death benefits. Unchanged. Curse remediation. Increased by 2% due to marrow-deep contamination reports. She nodded. Good, we renew if your seal is on it. Cassian stepped forward. Guildmaster Flint, I am the director of Hollowmere, and I assure you. No, Sierra said. Just that. No. I watched his soul trip over the word. She looked back at me. Your seal. For this renewal only. Understood. Northgate renewed at 6:23. Stonefinch renewed at 6:31 after demanding apology language for the payout delay. I wrote it. Hollowmere hated it. The guild loved it. Eastmere took longer. Their representative was a dry old elf named Varin Thist, who had been negotiating dungeon contracts since before House Vale discovered indoor plumbing. He read every line. Slowly. At 6:48, he said, this document appears acceptable. I let out a breath I had been holding in my spine. At 6:51, all 3 contracts were ready. At 6:55, the royal renewal window opened its final submission phase. At 6:57, my seal entered the contracts. At 6:58, the Royal Tax Bureau accepted provisional compliance. At 6:59, the blue ledger stamped the page with one glowing word. Renewed. At 7:00, the sunset bells rang across Hollowmere. No explosion. No cursed storm. No dramatic collapse of the tower into a pit. Just a tired room full of people realizing they had survived something that had not needed to happen. That is the thing about preventable disasters. When they are prevented, people call the work invisible. When they are not, they call it fate. I closed the ledger. The whole office seemed to exhale. Chairwoman Thorne turned to me. Mara, thank you. I nodded. Cassian said nothing. That was wise. For once. Then Auditor Sarrow cleared his throat. Before anyone leaves, the Royal Tax Bureau will require statements regarding the unauthorized dismissal of the living certifier, the attempted seal override, the injury reserve alteration, and the misleading redundancy classification. Cassian's face drained. Chairwoman Thorne looked at the auditors. Is that necessary? Sarrow's silver mask tilted. Chairwoman, your director nearly froze 46 million spirit stones in regulated dungeon payouts because he did not read a continuity clause. Necessary is a gentle word. I picked up my tea. It had gone cold again. Some things never change. Cassian lasted 9 more days. Not fired officially. Nobles are rarely fired. They are reassigned, invited to pursue private ventures, or encouraged to devote more time to family estates. In Cassian's case, the board announced he would be stepping away from operational leadership to focus on strategic external relations, which meant they gave him a title with no keys, no seal access, and no ability to touch anything sharper than a lunch menu. Alira stayed. That surprised me. What surprised me more was that she came to my house 3 days after the renewal disaster with a box of apology cakes and a face full of shame. My mother accepted the cakes, before I accepted the apology. She is practical like that. Elira stood in our tiny front room, looking painfully out of place among old quilts, herb bundles, and Pickle the fire salamander glaring from the stove. I was arrogant, she said. Yes. She winced. I thought academy credentials meant I understood the work. They mean you survived academy. That is fair. It is also more than some people manage. She looked down. I should have asked you. Yes. And when you warned us, I should have listened. Yes. She took a breath. Would you ever consider training me properly? I did not answer right away. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Inside, my mother was absolutely pretending not to listen from the kitchen. Why? I asked. Elira blinked. Because the office needs another certified seal holder. No, I said. Why do you want to learn? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, because when the ledger locked, everyone looked at me like I had power. And I realized I only had permission. I want to know the difference. That was a good answer. Annoyingly good. So I agreed to train her. Not for Hollowmere. For my consulting practice. Because yes, I started one. Veyne Seal and Ledger Advisory. The name is boring. That is how clients know it is serious. Chairwoman Thorne offered me my old job back first. With a raise. Then with a senior office. Then with expanded strategic authority, which is what people say when they do not want to admit they should have paid you properly years ago. I declined. Politely. Professionally. Repeatedly. In the end, Hollowmere became my first client. Not my employer. Client. There is a difference, so large you can build a house inside it. My contract required payment in advance, no unpaid emergency calls, no weekend seal work without triple rate, written authority for any recommendation they wanted me to implement, and a clause stating no noble family member could override compliance review by executive instinct. Legal tried to soften that wording. I refused. They signed. My first month as a consultant, I earned more than I had made in the previous 8 months as an employee. That felt good. But money was not the best part. The best part was Tuesday afternoons. Every Tuesday, I closed my office at 4 and took my mother to the warm baths near Lantern Street. Her cough eased there. The steam smelled like rosemary and mineral stone, and for 1 hour nobody asked me to fix a cursed ledger, explain tax exposure, or rescue a man from a clause he had personally approved. My brothers came by more often. My niece drew a new picture for my office. In this one, I was not fighting a dragon with an abacus. I was sitting on the dragon while it filed receipts. Accurate. Tavin left Hollowmere 6 months later and joined my firm as operations clerk. He still panics, but now he panics with health insurance and a chair that does not squeak. Elira passed the first level of dungeon payout certification on her second attempt. She failed the first because she overcomplicated an escrow problem so badly the examiner wrote, "Please stop trying to impress the invoice." I framed that note. For educational purposes. As for Cassian, House Vale tried to place him at a teleportation gate authority in the western provinces. That lasted 11 weeks. Apparently, he described gate calibration logs as administrative clutter, after which Gate 7 sent a merchant caravan to the wrong mountain. Nobody died. Several goats were offended. He now works in ceremonial outreach. I am told he gives speeches at ribbon cuttings, where all scissors are supervised. Do I hate him? No. That surprises people too. Hate takes energy, and I spent too many years spending energy on people who thought my exhaustion was part of my job description. Cassian did not ruin me. He clarified me. He showed me exactly how little the office valued my protection until I stopped providing it for free. That was painful, but it was also useful. People ask if I planned the whole thing. The honest answer is no. I did not want Hollowmere to fail. I did not want clerks crying into their ink trays. I did not want adventurers delayed, healers worried, auditors circling, or Illyra learning humility through blood pressure. I warned them. More than once. Then I left when they told me to leave. That is the part some people struggle with. They want revenge to be loud, fire, thunder, a curse written in red across the sky. But most consequences are quieter. A missed renewal. A locked ledger. A bank mirror asking for a number nobody has. A contract doing exactly what it promised to do. A woman taking her tea box home and finally refusing to carry a tower on her back. The last time I visited Hollowmere, Bram the security golem opened the door for me and said, "Consultant Mara Veyne, your cardigan remains pleasant." I told him he looked polished. He did. In the payout hall, my old desk had been replaced by a shared certification station with 3 trainees, 2 backup seal rings, and a bright red sign that read, "Red continuity clauses before SDAFFING, CHANGS." Tavin claimed he had nothing to do with the sign. Tavin is a terrible liar. I stood there for a moment, listening to the office hum. Crystal lamps buzzing. Copy sprites clicking. Clerks arguing over whether a cursed helmet counted as salvage or protective equipment. A courier raven shouting urgent at a sandwich. Ordinary chaos. Workplace chaos. The kind I had once mistaken for duty. Then I went back to my own office, where my tea was hot, my contract terms were clear, and my seal belonged to me. They thought they were replacing an old clerk with a modern system. What they learned, very expensively, was that in a world full of magic, the strongest ward in any office is still the person who understands what everyone else signs without reading.